Welcome to the Wildspire Conversations podcast. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate coaching sessions with inspiring entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto Padovani, wild creation coach and soul storyteller at The Awakened Business, where I help coaches, therapists, and creative entrepreneurs craft an irresistible message and broadcast it to the world. In each conversation, I'll ask curious, playful questions, challenging us to connect with the deeper purpose and joy of what we're here to do. We may experience one or more of the following: articulation of their soul's message and mission, life-changing stories, insights, ahas, and wisdom nuggets, ideas for new products, services, or businesses. Truth is, I have no idea exactly what will emerge, because there's no agenda for this conversation. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. It's time to get wild-spired. My conversational partner today is Sarah Taylor, who is the builder of her own bus conversion, off-grid tiny homesteader, and an intentional business coach. I wanted Sarah to be the very first guest on my podcast, long before it was an actual thing, because her vision for what's possible and the way that she embodies integrity by approaching every aspect of her life and business with this step-by-step compassionate intentionality is beyond impressive. She really dedicates her life to living in accordance with her values. Sarah also happens to be a powerhouse of information when it comes to issues of digital privacy and consent, women's empowerment, permaculture design, systemic poverty, and inclusive business practices and alternatives in the world of selling and pricing. Every time I talk to her, I am just astounded at the wealth of information she has gleaned through the process of intentional studying. Let me tell you a little bit more about Sarah. She helps conscious entrepreneurs start and build their businesses with intention so that they can sell without compromising their integrity. Over the last 4 years, Sarah has developed gentle marketing strategies, ethical business practices, and a regenerative framework that helps you create a business that cares for the earth and cares for people. She's written copy for corporations and small businesses and has worked with entrepreneurs to connect to their purpose and build out their message, platform, and income through the lens of intention. Sarah also writes emails that are delivered every 2 weeks that question the social norms of mainstream marketing, delve into alternatives to capitalism, and share ways to build regenerative economies. I strongly recommend that you connect with her and get onto her email list, which she uses very intentionally, by the way, modeling exactly what we'll talk about today, at sarahtaylor.net. Without further ado, Sarah Taylor. Okay. So Sarah, I'm so excited to have you with me today. And we've just given an introduction of, some of the highlights of you, but I was wondering if you could just start and just give me a little summary of where you are in your life right now and what you're up to.
Oh gosh. So, I live off-grid in Queensland, Australia, in the middle of a renovation. We're renovating our shed into our tiny house. And I'm halfway through a bus conversion into a tiny house as well, which has sort of temporarily been put on hold because it's in Melbourne and I'm in Queensland. I'm a small business coach to conscious entrepreneurs, and I'm just about to launch my skincare range, which I've been making for probably over a decade now, about 12 years. So that and a dog takes up a lot of my time.
So if you could create anything in this conversation that would be really fun, that would be inspiring, what would you want to create today?
I think it's always the same, but in different versions, which is I really want people to kind of come to a place where they can be more conscious in their life and and know that anything is possible. I think those are two really, really big themes for me that come through all the time. And, you know, often when I talk about my bus conversion or the things that I've done in my life, people are quite inspired, and I love that. I love that they then go on to think, oh, well, maybe I can do something that I've been dreaming of. Or so I think just this real, I want to see what we create together to inspire others, that you know, they'll take action and they'll do something outrageous with their life. You know, I mean, we're in a position at the moment where potentially it's a quieter time in your life, maybe not, but, you know, there's more space for inward thinking and some reflection and some intention. And so, you know, tapping into that would be quite fantastic.
So because we, you know, it's you and me here right now, and we don't have control over what anybody else does with this conversation. It's just the two of us.
Very true. Yeah.
What do you think? What if we focus on just crazily inspiring ourselves and getting each other to do something really outrageous?
I think that happens every time we talk. I think the last time we spoke, you messaged me and was like, I'm going to Japan and I'm doing this thing. and I was like, what? So yeah, definitely.
So if we were going to do that, so, you know, I'm as happy to put myself in the hot seat, I say that now, as you are willing to show up and be like, what are we going to create? I have no idea. So if we were going to do that, where would we begin? Like, so what's on the, okay, I'll answer this question too. Like, I feel like I want to be in this with you, which is funny.
Do it.
Like, let's do it. We're going to be in it together. Yeah. So, like, what's the biggest, craziest idea? Like the next step for you, the next big creation for you, and you know, your dedication to intentional living, purpose. You know, you're doing such a beautiful job of modeling that in a way that is sustainable. So what I see you doing is, I was just talking about you earlier, and I was saying Sarah's so brilliant at like really just looking at each area of life, a bit at a time, and just saying, okay, what's my life? What do I want for my life? What do I want for my business, for my lifestyle? And what are my beliefs? And how can I create something intentionally that's in alignment with that, that's good for the world, that's good for me, that it's aligned, and do it in a way that's not overwhelming. So I don't have to overhaul my whole life all at once.
Yeah.
So what's the thing that's like makes you tingle with it? Like, ooh, it's exciting, it's scary. It's like, what's happening in your world along those lines?
God, that sounds almost like every day. It's like every decision. Because I'm always trying to go deeper with it. Like, I'm always trying to learn new ways. I think the biggest tingly thing that happened very recently that still kind of I'm integrating is when I found the principles of permaculture design, and sort of was like, oh, that's a framework that, like, I can build things using that framework, whether it's how I do my dishes or how I, you know, build a business. It doesn't matter what the task is. I feel like I can find intention and find the tingly, like, excitement almost in anything that I do now, because I'm just like, how can this be more intentional? How can this be more rewarding? How can this have a bigger yield for less, you know, less work? How can this be good for the planet and good for people? So I'm always looking at that. I guess in practice, in my real life, my businesses are probably the two things that really get me going about that stuff. Like with my coaching business, it's about teaching other people how to use those principles in their own life. In my skincare business, it's practical stuff like, how do I find, you know, reusable, recyclable, safe packaging? How do I create products that are safe to return to earth through the grey water system, because, you know, everything is recycled here. That stuff lights me up. Like, I just, you know, I can just go down rabbit holes constantly trying to find
So can you tell me just a little bit about these principles of permaculture and how you're
Hmm.
using them as the framework? Because that's really interesting.
Yeah. So there's 12 principles in the permaculture design process and 3 ethics. And it's sort of a way to design a whole system. So it doesn't have to be a garden. Most people sort of think about permaculture as building a garden, but it's not just building a garden. It can be absolutely any process in your life. You can take the principles and apply them. So one of the principles is to observe and interact. So it's a really great place to start if you're wanting to create something new, is to observe your current situation and where you are in it, and interact with what's already around to see how things are already working, because you don't want to have to bulldoze things to the ground, like you were saying, right? You have this new idea come in, you don't want it to like rearrange your entire sort of process or integrity. You want to add it to in a positive way into the things that you're doing. So another one would be to produce no waste. That's another permaculture principle. And that means, for me, that doesn't just mean physical waste. That's waste of time, waste of energy. So from a business perspective, for example, it's thinking about, even when we were doing this process where we were looking at booking me in to do this today, I had to go into your calendar and I had to, put in my details and blah, 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 blah. So looking at that process, how can you not waste my time and your time?
Uh-huh.
Is there a way to streamline that more? Because it's not just about physically not producing waste. Like if someone has to give you their details 3 times in order to book in a call, right? That's a waste of energy. It's a waste of time. So it's looking at things like that and looking basically at a process as a whole system with you in the middle of it. So it could be a business, it could be a lifestyle, it could be a process within your business or a process within your life. And it's just I find it just a really exciting framework. Some of the principles won't matter or won't be as obvious per se. But some of them are truly like mind-blowing when you think about them. Especially, I think the producing no waste one for me is huge. And certainly as I go from a service-based business to a product-based business, that's really become very, very prominent in how I design things.
So the permaculture design,
Mm-hmm.
let me just make sure that I'm kind of getting this and you can help me fill in here. You're using this as a model for designing a system, whatever system you want.
Correct.
Now permaculture, and correct me if I'm wrong, is really about something that's sustainable, that's efficient,
Yes.
it's a culture, right? So we think of it as a garden, but it's like it's a system that is enriching, sustaining for itself, kind of. Is that the idea behind it?
Yeah, and more regenerative than sustainable. So
yes, okay, yes,
3 ethics. Cool. Yeah, so because it's continually going.
Right.
So it's the ethics are care for earth, care for people, and then fair share or redistribution of surplus back into the system. And so it's just a lovely, for me, it was just a lovely framework to kind of go, oh, that makes sense. That's kind of what I've been trying to do. And this has given me the language and the tools and the principles to kind of take and do in my own business, but also it's impacted how I coach. It's literally impacted the way that when someone works with me, is to say, okay, well, when was the last time we looked at your whole system? Like, where are you? What's right for you? How much sleep do you need? Where do you live? Like, what's your cycles? What's your, vision? What's your purpose? And getting really, really specific with them in their life.
Cool.
Before
okay.
They create. Yeah.
So this is beautiful. So it's just giving you that framework. And I know from talking with you before that you have this genius at like going out there and like, I don't have the thing that I need to apply this yet. So you go out and you look for the thing that helps you create whatever it is you're trying to do. In this case, like intentionality in your business and life. And you found this permaculture design model framework here and these principles that are so aligned with you, caring for the earth, caring for people, and then fair share, redistributing back into the system. I mean, you can apply that to any system. It's like, is it
absolutely
in neurolinguistic programming, we talk about this as the concept of ecology. Is it good for the ecosystem, the entire ecosystem, yourself, other people, the planet, the universe, everything? right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's incorporating that. Cool.
Yeah. I've got goosebumps. See, I love it. It really, for me, it's just, yeah, it's perfect.
So you're doing this in your businesses primarily. That's where you're like, it's mostly lighting up for you, helping other people do this in their businesses as a coach. And
Sure.
then
Yes.
your skincare. And then you're doing it personally in your
So I
life.
was doing it personally first, but I didn't have the language. I didn't know what it was I was doing. And you're right. You've said it so much better than I would. I would call it an obsessive research mode when I go out and I'm like, right, I need to find things or people or, you know, which came from feeling alone. Like a lot of the time where I just had this vision or had these ideas or was living a certain way and there wasn't any frame of reference around me. And so now I do it as a bit of a kind of fun and a nice way to spend my time is to go and collect people or, you know, people's bodies of work or ideas and people doing things differently. And that was it for me with permaculture. I wanted to find something that would help me build my garden, physically grow food, but also I knew that there was a framework out there that I didn't have to create myself in order to be in business in a way that felt very similar to my life. Because for me, business is an extension of who we are. So my purpose as a human being is the same as my purpose for my business. So it doesn't matter how that manifests, what that looks like, whether it's a product or a service or 5, 10, 20 businesses, the purpose is the same. And so I had to have a framework that kind of underpinned all of those, if that made sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So yeah, so I went out and did my research.
So I'm thinking about like, talking with you, Sarah, makes me feel, the word is like, I just feel like inspired to be, there is something earthy and organic and juicy and rich and it feels like that to me, and it's kind of interesting. I'm noticing it because it's my energy has shifted just since I started talking to you. So let me ask you. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, here's where for me the permaculture design principles are unique and brilliant in that nothing about my life needs to look like your life. So you don't need to have a bus conversion. You don't need to live off grid. You don't even want to live tiny. Nothing about those things. You can apply it to how you do any process in your normal house or any process in your normal life, or your business, or most of my clients are not people that want to live off grid. That's a choice. That's a personal choice that I've made with the way that I want to live my life. It's not a prerequisite to build a business with intention or build a life with intention. So that's why I loved them. It was sort of like these set of rules or principles or guidelines or ideas, frameworks and structures that you could put on anything in anyone's life and make it more of a whole system, make it more complete and well thought out.
So like rather than missing a real opportunity here to help people create the type of life that works for them, which is what you are doing for yourself, continuously learning how to do and getting like you could have. And I know this was kind of a part of your journey, and how I found you in the beginning was through, there was just something about you and your message that was so strong that I was like, I want to follow her. I don't know why. And you were talking about living off grid and your tiny home and the bus conversion. And I'm like, I have no interest in having a tiny home or converting a bus or even living off grid, in fact, but I do like travel and I want to live lightly. And there's a certain type of living that I'm, using smaller footprint. Like I'm more about that. But there was just something about you. You could have easily kept going down that road and had a really strong message and helped people who wanted to do that. But instead you found this strongly resonating underlying principle that, that is what it looks like for you. But really you've discovered, oh no, I want to talk about intentional living and intentional business. That's not just your way of doing that. Yeah.
And, that was a really painful process. Like it's really awesome that you got it, that the click happened and you were made to, my message has always been bigger than the bus. And we sort of joked that the bus is a literal vehicle, but it's also a metaphorical vehicle for bigger things, for purpose. I mean, that's why I named her Purpose. But it was a painful process to do that, like to switch, because I knew at a certain point that it was much more about intentional living than it was about bus conversion. And that intentional living was way more nuanced and deep and broad, and there were so many ways that it could show itself. Like for the minimalists, it's that; for the capsule wardrobe people, it's that; for the the living off grid, it's that. It's many ways that it can be manifested in sort of everyday life. But that was a really hard pivot for a lot of people. They just didn't get it, and but I just had to follow what was right. And you're right, my message got stronger and stronger and stronger because of it. But yeah, it was a very interesting time, because I'd sort of built up this audience and this bus conversion, and then I started talking about business and other things intentionally, which didn't often make the connection. So it's been a big journey, but I just know it's closer to what I want to talk about and what I really stand for. And I don't regret it at all. Just,
So what got you through that difficult pivot? Like, how did you navigate it?
That was the research mode. Whenever I get a little bit lost or a lot lost or, feel lonely, or like I've made the wrong decision, or I'm just uncertain, I go into research mode. And so that's when I took a year off. I closed down my Facebook page. I took a year off. I worked with a spiritual business mentor, and just gently started finding people who were really doing things differently, whether it was their messaging or whether it was like literally using a platform in a way that nobody else was using. And I just have this little like collection of these people that I'm like, okay, I love following you and I love following you. And anytime a client says, oh, I can't do that, I show them 5 people that have done it, or so I love just collecting ideas and bodies of work, and they didn't need to match or marry mine in any way. They just needed to be there as this beacon of like, oh, you're doing it completely differently. That means I can do it completely differently.
Yeah. Here's another area of where I think you're very brilliant. Something that you do in the way that you think is that a lot of people I've found have difficulty mapping from an industry, a situation, a model outside of their experience over to their own. But how does that apply to me? How does that apply to my business? They would look at permaculture and think only garden and not be able to see the system. It's a metaphor, right? They would see the bus and see only the conversion and not see it as, I mean, the metaphor is actually very powerful. I think all of us.
The vehicle for change, the vehicle for, for sure. I know. I get it. It sounds awful even coming out of my mouth, but that's true. It's how I feel about it.
Yeah. And so this is a gift that you have in being able to go out there and go into that research mode, see these desperate things or seemingly disconnected things and go, oh, wow, I could do this, apply it here, and I could learn from that.
I definitely connect things in a way that I don't think a lot of people do. And even within the permaculture community there and the sustainability community and the off-grid living community, there's very little talk about using permaculture principles as a business model.
Wow.
There's a couple of women doing business coaching like I do that are way more educated in the permaculture world. I'm kind of a newbie. I'm very much a student. But it's definitely not even within the permy sort of people, is it like really, people aren't thinking that way. They're there to build their gardens, which is awesome, or community structures, or things like that. So that's why I just love taking ideas and seeing how they fit in a place that, I mean, the permaculture principles are a design model, so they can and should be used for whatever you want, but it's not common. So I quite like that. I quite like taking things that aren't commonly connected and seeing and playing with them and seeing what happens.
And this is where so much, like the spark of genius. I was just talking to someone yesterday who's been struggling to discover his next steps, what he wants to do, what he wants to create in his life. And it's like, everything is like, there's so much to choose from. It's so overwhelming. And, one of the things to go out and do once we can get out of our thinking about it being heavy, is to
Yeah.
just explore and look
Yeah.
for people and things that draw you, and
Yes.
noticing what you notice, because it will spark, like for you were
Always.
looking for a framework and a system and different ways of doing things, and you'll see somebody else doing it and it'll spark that for you, how you can do it in your life, which may look completely different.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I mean, I found permaculture through wanting to build a garden, but I found other people through wanting to find, for example, when I was considering, stepping back from social media and deciding that that was not the platforms for me or my business or where I wanted to hang out, it was like, okay, so what other options are there? And going and finding people that were and weren't using social media, but people who were very vocal about why they'd made, it was basically finding really intentional people, finding people whose message and purpose was really powerful and really strong, but that they were able to articulate either their own reasoning, or they were able to give me language that I didn't have for a feeling I just kept feeling. And so that's what drew me to a lot of people, was just like, oh, you're able to kind of say how I feel, and you've come from somewhere else, so it's not quite there yet, but it was a starting point for me to be able to go, okay, this is now, I have an opinion about this now, and I can talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I guess to be able to communicate, like that's my goal, is to be a communicator and help others do the same.
So I would love to know, in your words, what is your vision for the world? We have this Facebook group we're in, like #epic vision, and it's usually, how would you complete the sentence? My vision is a world where, fill in the blank. Like, what's your vision?
Where we genuinely get that we all thrive when we all thrive. Like, that's it. Like, we only thrive when we all thrive. There's just too many tears. There's too much distance and disconnection. And I think the only way we all get lifted up is when we're all thriving. So it's not like I'm going to take all of this and you can only have this much. Like, there's this shift away from scarcity, away from fear, on every level that we live in, whether it's business models, structures, government. There's this, I really want a world where that's what we understand to be true. And we build platforms and systems to support that.
So what would be, like, if you could, and you may already, well, let me not mess up my own question and trip over my own tongue. Back up, rewind. So what would be the biggest, most inspiring way that, like, thing, being, whatever, that you'd like to create that would do that? Like, if you could have that impact on the world in any area, and maybe it would be every area, I don't know, but like, what would that be? If you could help people genuinely get that, when we all thrive, when we all thrive.
Yeah.
And that's really the only time we all thrive, when we all do. Yeah.
Because I think things like empowerment are banded around, and are like words that are just kind of, it's become kind of quite cliched to say, oh, I want to empower people. And it's like, well, I think we have to look at the structures that we build our lives and businesses with. Because empowerment isn't a lot of things that we think it is. Empowerment is really allowing other people to rise up as well, and having processes and structures and ways for people to have accessibility, for there to be diversity, for self-sufficiency, community sufficiency. I mean, the money economy, I've noticed in the last few weeks since we've been here on the property alone, isn't the only economy. Like, we've got reciprocity, we've been given so many plants and food and swapped things, and so there's so many things out there that we're not tapping into. And I think starting there is a really, even if you don't want to grow your own food, or even if you don't want to run your own business, there are, from the government down, there are things that we can be doing every day to be a bit more conscious about how my actions today impact the earth, the world, the universe, other people, society. It's really about getting more conscious, if you can.
So this idea is
I know,
like,
it's hard.
it's percolating. Oh no, when you're saying this, something just struck me. I'm like, so if you could create this movement
Mm-hmm.
that it has a name, but for this, for the purposes of this, we'll call it permaculture design of your life and business,
Mm-hmm.
that would become a movement in that, so you now have a group of advocates and followers and practitioners and people
Mm-hmm.
who are taking this understanding that you found, which is that we can apply the principles of permaculture design
Mm-hmm.
to, look at how we care for ourselves, how we care for the earth, we care for our communities, and we give back within the system.
Mm-hmm.
And you had like a group of people with you, like rolling this out to work this process on the processes and structures we currently have, or even scrapping them entirely to create new ones.
Yeah, maybe.
Would that be really cool?
Yeah, it would. And I love the bigness of it, but I also want to point to the tiny decisions as well that we can make. So, one of the things when I was just doing my bus conversion and people were asking me, well, how can I live more sustainably, or how can I think people automatically think, well, you have to have land and you have to grow your own food and you have to have this much money to do it, and it just becomes this huge thing that feels completely out of your control and not possible. And so you can literally take the permaculture principles and apply them to how you do your dishes or the things that you buy. Like you can apply them to the way that you purchase your products, or so you can go really small with it as well as really big, and it still has an impact. And that's kind of important, that it's not just I want everyone to have their own business and be self-sufficient in their income. I do, if that's what they want. But there's also a way to design your life to have the impact that you want it to have. So for some people, it's not going to be the same as me.
Yeah. Well, what I was kind of poking around at in that is, what if you specifically could create that in the world? I'm wondering if you would choose it, if that would be exciting, if you could be the one who rolls out this new way of thinking that teaches people, that inspires people in this way. Like, how would you want to do that? And yes, that's the whole amazingness of it, is that it's plugged into this beautiful, gorgeous, huge purpose, but it's done with small, realistic, everyday things that we can do. Like, we don't have to go, I have to change my whole life. It's actually applying, it's bringing it down to simple things. It's simple.
Yes. I think it would feel amazing to do that. And that's why I love coaching, because I do that one-on-one. And it's just amazing to watch people, for things to click for them, and it's always different, because a particular design principle will really resonate with somebody, and it depends where they are in their business and all that stuff as well. Like, if they're in startup mode, it can be really, really overwhelming, because you're just like, oh my God, all these things I have to take into consideration, and it's just never ending. And so you have to start really, really tiny. A lot of it's just about being asked, what do you want? And honestly answering that with some consideration, and not being frightened of saying, I don't want to do it that way. I want something else. Like, even when I didn't know the words for it, I knew that this way was not the way for me. And there was something different that I hadn't quite found yet. That excites me more than, for example, making every business a permaculture business. It's more about the one-on-one with people, and getting them to a point where they're not scared to say, well, I don't want to do that, and I want to do this instead. Because I think there's this concept that we have to compromise our integrity to get profit, or we have to compromise our purpose in order to make money, or there's only this one way to do business, or one way to do marketing. And using the permaculture principles as a framework to help people see that there are other ways, or that you're allowed other ways, and to think about things slightly differently, is what I get really excited about doing. So rolling it out as a single process, I don't know. It's a very, very one-on-one.
Yeah. Well, it would have to be applied individually,
100%. Yeah.
And I'm just kind of thinking about like for example, I'm trying to think who's an example of someone who's done this in an area, who's done something where they have created a movement that changed the whole way we think. There are a million examples of this, and the way we think about medicine, or the way we think about education, or like now it's everyday ordinary stuff. Like it's like, oh yeah, of course we think about this, but it was a paradigm shift, right? Like that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about moving paradigm shift. It's not just a change to the way we do things now. It's actually a whole shift into a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And all of the systems and structures that we use to support the things we have in our lives.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it doesn't feel like that where I'm sitting. It feels like such a huge undertaking, and certainly not something that I'm going to be like leading the way on. Like it's just, I'm doing it in my little small way because it makes sense to me, and I feel that this is the way I want to live my life. But something shifted for me when I realized, I came across in my research, a 2,000-year-old food forest that was still producing food and feeding about 800 people. And it got me thinking about my own garden. It got me thinking about my business. It really shifted that this process is about legacy over a lifetime and beyond. It's not about sort of overnight success or making things happen within 6 months, or, it really shifted this idea. Okay, so if it's a legacy I'm after, then what does that look like? What decisions do I make now that they're going to impact my life today, but that will later on go, and it's not just about sort of maybe having something that your children will inherit or that future generations will inherit, but how can it continue to do good out there in the world long after you're no longer here? And that shifts your perspective a little bit when you start. It's like, okay, so if you take that as your mindset, if you're thinking about legacy, if you're going to be a 2,000-year-old food forest, or your business is, then are you going to worry today about not posting on Facebook? Or are you going to come off of Facebook because it's not the place that you want to be anymore? Like when you start looking at that sort of scale, the little details and the little decisions that you can make shift, I think, and really become less powerful. You get less stuck, you get less overwhelmed.
So I'd love to apply this is something that I've been thinking about more recently. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and I've been having conversations about this a bit. Barry Friedman, who I talked to in a conversation like this earlier last week, he said he thinks about what if, like just asking the question, what if we made decisions with a 7-generation point of view? And that's kind of what you're pointing to, like legacy. Like
for sure.
The choices we made today were not just for the next 6 minutes or the next 6 hours, but for like generations down the, like we actually knew and thought and felt into, we were intentional in what ripple effect this was going to have. And I spoke to someone else who was talking about the ideas actually in astrology this year that we're like shifting from earth to air, I believe it was. But the bottom line was the implication was that the old way of doing things, the industrial way of doing things, that earth energy of doing things, the stock market and the profit model are dying. And that we're actually bringing in a new way, and that part of this whole COVID situation is kind of making that happen. It's like a big part of it. It's a jumping off point. And this is the paradigm. It's almost like you have to completely let go of the old and reinvent something new. And I started thinking about that because it feels to me, and I don't have the research and the statistics or the background to point to this, but it feels to me that there's a whole other way of doing business and living. And I just never really thought about it until I started talking to people like you. And it's a part of my own growth and evolution, really.
Yeah.
Like, wow, what if there was more than enough? What if, because there is, like, there's no reason anyone needs to starve.
No, and it's all about redistribution. It's all about, there's abundance everywhere. And it's the distribution that gets broken.
Yes. So what could that look like? Like if let's just take business and, you know, the profit model, like how do you see that shifting? Like where we no longer just measure the success of our business based on how much money we make, how much profit there is left over, how much the shareholders get. Like what do you see in that vision?
I mean, I've always seen that that's not the way that I measure success, or that it can be measured. You know, I'm in a very, very privileged position. I had a personal crisis 5 years ago, which means now I don't have mortgage. I don't have any utility bills. You know, we live small, we live tiny, we live off grid. And in a couple of years, I'll be growing my own food. So that happened way before COVID did for me. So now I'm in a position where our daily life hasn't really changed. The only thing that's, you know, I would say is slightly inconvenient is that shops are closed. But that's, you know, I'm not suffering in any way. So I've been able to kind of ponder a lot of things that others aren't, maybe. But I hope that the people that can make the shifts in their life that I did 5 years ago through this process. I think it's really important to know what you actually need and versus what you think you do. You know, I was saying this for a long time, even with my bus conversion, when I did my 4-week spending freeze, was to figure out what was I spending versus what do I actually need to survive. And that amount was like half of what I thought it was. And that was a huge game changer for me in terms of, well, how quickly I could achieve what I wanted to achieve, how quickly I could quit my job, how quickly I could save a buffer. I think those sorts of questions we can be asking ourselves now too. You know, with shops being shut, do you really need that thing, or do you just think you do? You know, there's lots of people that were eating out that no longer can eat out. There was lots of people that were spending money that are no longer able to spend that money. And we're all alive. I mean, there are a lot of people struggling out there. And that's a very different, you know, thing. I'm talking about sort of people who weren't struggling in the beginning are now maybe reevaluating the way that they live, you know, where they shop, why they shop there, all those things. But I think there is big shifts coming for sure. I see it in my friends already, just asking different questions now. And possibly like, you know, my husband's colleague absolutely loves working from home, doesn't want to go back to the office now. He just loves it. Things like that will shift. And the way that we use our energy and our money will change as well, I think. I hope.
Yeah. And I do too. I see it. I see it already. Someone
it was happening. It was happening. Farmers markets. It was like there was trading going on. There's always been that, but it's been quite, not underground, but, you know, it's just been very local and very quiet. And I think that reciprocity, that, you know, you just have to go outside and see abundance is everywhere. It's really about tapping into where those resources are for you. And yeah. And the debt component too, I think as well will shift. I think people will not be going as quickly into debt as they once perhaps were.
So in this world where we really get that we all thrive when we all thrive, what do you see business as like how is business different?
For me, it's about accessibility, I think, or part of it is about accessibility, about sort of ethical and sustainable pricing structures. It starts with knowing what I need to thrive on and having that. So, you know, I use an indigenous harvesting model for my pricing, which means that for every 4 plants, you harvest 1. So for every 4 clients, I'm able to give 1 pro bono or have a reduced rate or pay what you can kind of service. And it doesn't deplete me and it doesn't deplete my income in a way that, would be harmful. And then it also allows me to do group programs as a pay as you can or pay what you can as well. So there's lots of ways that I build that kind of stuff into my business, and encourage others to at least look at it as well. There's this there was this big movement that you had to have 6 figures in 6 months and you have to have high-end VIP, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's a real part of my business model for sure, but it's not the only thing. So I think accessibility, because if we're not lifting everybody up, then how does everybody get there?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I've been in positions where I couldn't afford things. I was living week to week on a very, very low income. It's like, how do you get out of that systemic poverty? How do you get out of that systemic system, that situation, and get yourself into a better position where you can afford things? And so we have to take responsibility for that. We can't be reaching for 6 figures or this like multiple 6-figure business and not paying our VAs a living wage, for example. We can't be reaching, if we're reaching for this big goal, we can't be doing that and saying that we're empowering others because we're employing them but not giving them a decent enough wage. Like, that's not real empowerment. Real empowerment is accessibility to your work, I think.
So in this world that we're talking about, like, I actually want to see how close we could get to solving the problem. Like really just to fleshing it out, like, what would it look like? So you're talking about first, like, ethical and sustainable pricing structures, so that things are so that no longer is business running on bottom line. We're actually thinking about how can we create our pricing structure so that it meets our needs and the needs of that's everyone, our employees. Of
course, that's where you start. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yep. It meets our needs first, and we also make it accessible for those who need it, so that we're uplifting, we're contributing to the uplifting of everyone by allowing these services.
Surplus.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's the distribution of surplus. So what else would be different in business?
I mean, the whole top-down thing would just shift. You wouldn't have, you wouldn't work with people that could only afford to pay you $10,000. You'd be working with a whole range. For me, it's diversity, it's inclusivity, it's not just saying my product or service is $10,000 and you're not my ideal client if you can't afford it. Like, that whole concept really gives me the shits. It's just, I've been so many people's ideal client except for the fact that I can't afford them.
Yeah.
Because of other things that are going on. I mean, we're building our businesses around the 1% or we've got 70%, almost 80% of Americans, almost 40% of Australians, and almost 50% of people in the UK are all living paycheck to paycheck, and they're also in debt. Now, that is not of a certain income bracket. That is a total amount, a total percentage of the population. So why are we building our businesses to service only the top percent when 70% of us or 50% of us are never going to be able to afford what you're selling? That's not solving a problem. I heard a business coach once tell people that you shouldn't try and solve broke people's problems. And I just thought, that's exactly what we should be doing. That's exactly what we should be doing.
I've heard the same thing. Like, if you want to make a teacher's salary, sell the teachers. Like, in other words, if you want to make a broke person's salary, sell the broke people. And yet so many of the really purpose-driven, heart-centered entrepreneurs that I know, the people who really want to change the world, they want to reach everyone who's open to it, not just the people who have money. And so it's like their heart breaks, and sometimes there's a misunderstanding in their pricing that isn't working for them because they want to reach these people. And it's not like one way or the other. Like, you have to charge these high prices that exclude them, or you have to be so cheap that you're not valuing yourself and you're not taking care of your own.
There's a range, and it can be done all at once. You don't have to be high end or not high end. You can have both, because you're going to be servicing different clients at different times in their journey at a different price point. Like, there are things that I can teach in an hour that I could not, that doesn't translate the other way around. Like, I cannot help you build out your business intentionally. The things that I do in 3 and 6 months, I cannot do that in an hour workshop, but I can teach you a tiny little piece that you might need right now. Or my freer content might, like the conversations I have or the videos I make or the content I put out there might spark an idea in you. And that's how that starts for you. But it's not, I just feel like we're judging people or making decisions about others based on their current income. And I just think that's kind of a ridiculous way to do business. It's like this idea that, once I get rich, I'll be happy. Once I get rich, I can help. Once I do this, once I earn this amount, then I can give back. How about we just build giving back into our business model, into a way that is sustainable for us so that we don't reach burnout? Because that's the big thing. Everyone's like, oh, but if you're giving away all your stuff for free, you're going to have burnout. It's like, well, not if you're being nourished by your business. Not if you're already being nurtured and nourished by what you earn, by the way that you live, by where you get your food from. Like, these are all things that you can choose to build. It's not, do this first and then. It's how do you want to, if you want to give. But how are you making your money? What do you need to pay your rent? What do you need? What do you absolutely need to survive every month? And then what do you need to thrive every month? Okay, so that's your goals. That's your financial goal. Number 1 is surviving. Financial goal number 2 is thriving. Then how can you give back? If you can build your business based on, that once you have this amount coming in, then that means you can give out time, energy, freebies, content, whatever.
So this would be a way of thinking about business that just becomes, like, I'm just thinking about this, like, what if this way of thinking in business was just as natural as it is right now to go and look at income and expenses and, like the things that every person in business has to learn how to do.
Yeah.
They thought about, okay, what do I need to survive? What do I need to thrive? And how can I give back? And what pricing nourishes all of us? So we're all thriving. It's not just me. Like, there's a place for someone who has nothing or very little to contribute to come and learn from me if they choose. And that works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the reason that I found it so hard to be in business and why I ended up burned out a couple of times and then had to really take that whole year off, which ended up only being about 6 months. But it was really intense because I just saw these structures and these ways of doing things that didn't feel right. And I was the person at the other end of that couldn't afford. Like, I mean, I've told you this before. I remember selling my fridge in order to pay for a coach because I couldn't afford my last session. And I was just like so desperate to make something work. And I got so much from it. Like that whole experience was incredible. And I was single and white and cisgendered and privileged and educated and, and I was on a low income. So imagine if you have kids or if you're a single parent or if you're like, there are so many things that we don't take into consideration when we're A, building our own businesses and B, thinking about our clients' experience or the people, our audience, the people that we want to, reach. I want to fix broke people's problems because there shouldn't be anyone broke. Everyone should be allowed to thrive. Everyone should have a way to live sustainably the way that they want to and do meaningful work. I mean, the growth model, the industrial revolution, it's just rubbish. Like, we've got to get rid of it. This idea that we're just, success is, we made more money this year. It's why I love Paul Jarvis. He wrote The Company of One. And I just love his whole philosophy on, I don't think he's intentionally grown his business for the last 2 or 3 years now. His income has remained the same and it was an intentional decision because he looks at his decisions all the time and go, okay, do I need more? Well, I'm happily living in the woods. I don't like going out, so I don't. I write to my list once a week. I sell my programs twice a year or 3 times a year. I earn this much money. Sweet. Okay. He's got no moving parts in his business. He's got no VAs to pay. He's got these are the decisions that we can all make. He gives back. He's able to donate a lot of money. He's able to live the lifestyle that he wants to live, which could be extravagant for the money he earns, but it's not because he doesn't want to.
If you could get this message, you and I, we, whomever, could get this message to someone, who would carry this? I think about Seth Godin in his book, All Marketers Are Liars / Storytellers, where he talks about when you're creating a movement, the people who, if you go for the mainstream, they're not going to hear you because their worldview doesn't align. And there are a lot of people still whose worldview does not align with this. And many of them are in business because we've all been taught, it's been shoved down our throat that you have to make money, that you have to charge high prices, that you need to have premium products and, you know, go for that. The people who can afford you and all of that, like so many people, the journey in small businesses, you start out underpricing and then realize that it actually costs you more time and energy than you thought it did. And you have more expensive than you thought. And then you have to bump up your prices. And then, you know, and then you're leaving people.
And misaligned.
Right. Exactly. All over the place, right? Who are the people, who are your people who are getting this, who will carry this message to everyone?
So people who are already doing it in their own way, these are the people that I've collected. So people like Paul Jarvis, people like Kelly Deals in her way. Toy Smith is another person who just blows my mind. She's doing business very differently and talking about capitalism and just fabulous woman. There are a few out there. It's just they're harder to find. so you know,
those are the people who are doing it.
Yes.
And then who are the people who will support it? Who are the people who are going to rally around and do it in their smaller ways? Because they're not maybe as visible as these people you found.
Yeah, I mean, they range from, I mean, I work with coaches, I work with yoga people, I work with healers, I work with, you know, it's a broad range of modalities. It's people that really just, I kind of tapped into it when I was talking about mainstream marketing being a certain way. And it's funny to watch people sort of comment on things that I write or because they're just so varied. But the thread is for them that they just feel like something's not quite right. And often they haven't got the language for it yet. So, you know, the sales funnels and the email nurture sequences and all of that stuff for them feels wrong or icky or strange or it's just not right. And they're trying to build a business that's helping people. And then they've got this marketing aspect that's very sort of push and salesy and just all about the money. And that's not what their values aren't built into it. So it's a broad range. For me, the things that we have in common range from feminism to permaculture to off-grid living to straight up business. Like it's the softer, I would say like the softer entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, heart-centered, I guess, is kind of that, but I think that's quite broad as well. There are lots of heart-centered people that are not into what I'm talking about at all.
Yeah. They're just kind of like something about doing business this way doesn't fit. And I want to do it differently. I want to find a different way. The hardcore sales, the psychologically manipulative marketing, that stuff and scarcity. Right. And
but
these
often
things are not working for me now.
Yes. Yeah. And often they don't know that. So like,
they couldn't even tell you that. They couldn't even articulate that. This and this don't work.
Yeah. It's really funny. Yeah. So when the people come to me, I'm like, that's because that's psychological pricing. And here's how psychological pricing works. Or that's because women are trained to charge their worth. And here's why we shouldn't be. Or that's because, you know, mainstream marketing tells us blah, 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 blah. And here's why that feels off for you or might. Yeah.
So like here's what I want to do, Sarah. Like talking to you. And I'm like, geez, I have to sit with this one because as you're talking, I'm like, there's something about this that intrigues me that I want to facilitate. I'm trying to find I'm still discovering my own place in this. I mean, obviously it's personal and it's my life and it's my business and how I contribute to this. That's one way.
Yes.
There's also a way that my message aligns with it. And I'm like, geez, what do I want to create in the world? And so like, what I want to do is like, I want to take you and I want you talking to all of these podcasters and websites and all these summits and events for these, what we might call softer or heart-centered entrepreneurs. with the practical thinking behind this. Like,
Yeah.
I want to put you there. I want to plug you into those people because
Yeah.
they're going to get what you're saying. You're giving language to the problems, and not only
Yeah.
giving language to the problems, you have a framework for them to create something different.
Yeah.
And I don't know
exactly
that anybody, does anybody else have that? Not the way you do.
I don't think anyone does in any way of their business though. And that's the beautiful bit. I think it's so lovely what you're saying. And I think you're absolutely right. This sort of conscious entrepreneur who wants to do things differently is definitely, that's it. I don't think there's anyone doing it the same way as me because they haven't had my experience or my poverty or my journey, everything that I've been through. But I love connecting the dots for other people. I love giving them a framework that they can use parts of or all of, or, you know, it's just a different way of thinking. It's that bit of you're not alone. It's like, oh, that's why that didn't feel good. And we are so bombarded with messaging that tells us to ignore that we're not good enough, that we're not skinny enough, that we're not like, I mean, there's so many reasons or ways that we are told to ignore that gut instinct of ours. And I think I always spend a lot of time in the very beginning of coaching somebody, and sometimes it's literally weeks of really understanding who they are and what they want and what their purpose is. And because everything comes from that. You can't possibly build something if you don't know what you value, if you don't know what's important to you, if you don't know what you need to thrive in your life or what that looks like. And a lot of that's unpacking this permission. It's unpacking not having language to describe something. So we sit for quite a while talking about the feelings and the emotional tones to it. Because I remember just sobbing. I didn't have the words. I just couldn't do what they were telling me to do because it didn't feel right. And it took 18 months to find language, you know. And so hopefully now, having found it and connecting the things the way that I do, I'm able to sort of put that on the table as an option or as something to ponder. But that's why the process takes a while. You know, I don't have I've got a framework and it's awesome, but that framework might take you 2 years to implement, or it might take 6 months. It depends where you're at and what how quick you integrate, how much time you need for each of the principles, or which ones you don't want to use, or But yeah, I want to be plugged in too.
Yeah. I mean, every time we talk, I'm like, I'm getting these visions of you on multiple media sources, really just talking, just sharing, just helping, coaching and teaching and sharing in a way that's really natural and easy. And none of this is being shoved down anyone's throat. You're not saying I have all the answers and do it my way. It's like, hey, let's apply this framework to create a permaculture system, an ecosystem in our business and our lives that is thriving for every part of it.
And it's always experimental, and it's always genuinely approach it all with curiosity, and sort of that buzzy feeling we talked about earlier, like how can this principle be applied to business? There's some that I still don't know, and I'm still like, okay, and if you Google them, you won't find anything because no one's applying them in this way really, or creating content around it anyway. So for a lot of them, I'm still like, okay, so what if I take the principle and I think, okay, if I was a book, what book would this principle be? And then I go and find the book, or if I was a person, or if I was a fruit, or if I was a something, what would that be for this principle? And I go and find it and see if that mind map ends in like a person or a body of work or a way to teach this principle in business. Because sometimes I don't have the answers, I start with the obvious ones and apply them and show how that can be impactful. But some of them are, very much garden related. So then I go to nature and I'm like, okay, what does nature tell us? Well, nature tells us that abundance is everywhere. So I have many, many trees here and not one of them is worried about the other tree having more leaves, right? That's a very obvious thing to look outside and go, oh yeah, of course. Okay, abundance is everywhere. Or that there's enough food for all the birds that come at the different seasons, and, it's the distribution of that abundance that we need to work on.
Yeah. And
I always do it to you. Sort of always look a bit like, oh God.
no, I just really think about this. And
Yeah.
so like if I were your manager, I would be like, I would just want to be, I'd be like putting your one sheet in front of all these people. Like, you just need to have Sarah speak to your audience, have Sarah speak to this audience, because it will catch. Like,
Yeah, I hope so.
because it's practical and it's like there would be a
Yeah.
book and there would be a course and there would be one-on-one coaching.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
there
yeah.
would be like come through this process.
Yeah.
And
And you know, the point is as well that I have been going through and will continue to go through this process. For me, there is, you know, you've known me for a while now. I've been finding my voice and I've been sort of writing differently and then trying new things. And, you know, it's all an experiment. Like everything, I can bang on about the results I've had, like, but that's not, I can't give you those results if you're not willing to play or experiment or release expectation. Like, I didn't go into writing my newsletter thinking, okay, I have to get this amount of open rates and I have to do this and by this time, da, 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 da. I didn't. It took 9 months. I started writing and I'd never written before. I summoned the words, you know, monthly, because that was all I managed. And then it was like, okay, that became a little bit easier. And then it was sort of fortnightly. And then my open rates got higher. And then I was like, oh, what about weekly? And then I tried weekly and they dropped and I got unsubscribes. And I was like, okay, maybe fortnightly's the thing. And, you know, but this is a process. And every part of your business is that. It's like an experiment. And so, yes, there's framework. Yes, there's ideas. Yes, there's mindset. Yes, there's always a more aligned to your values way of doing things. But you have to be willing to try them. I can't just give you my framework and be like, yeah, you're going to succeed now. Like, success is what you decide it is and how you want to build it.
So I just kind of made a connection for myself of something that I've been looking for here. It's kind of like, okay, so in order to carry this message, in order to really create this movement and find the people who will resonate with it and carry it for you, because there's only so much that you can do as an individual, but when you align with these people, you can change the entire world, is that, first of all, find the people who are these conscious entrepreneurs, maybe we'll call them that, conscious entrepreneurs, who want to do things differently. They don't even necessarily have the languaging. They're like, something doesn't work. They really want to help people. They want to reach people. And they also want to thrive themselves. They want the whole thing. So reach those people with this way of thinking that they can begin to apply in tangible, small, actionable strategies to their businesses. And see the results and see the changes and then spread it from there because they're so excited about it. And I was thinking, like, what do they need to know in order for them to take this in? So they like need to know it's possible. Tell me, what do you think they need to know? Like, what's the mindset shift that needs to happen in order for them to say, yes, I want to do this. I want to experiment this. I want to engage in this process.
So that they're not wrong, I think is a big one. That they're not wrong. The feeling, the emotion, even if you can't language it yet, you're not wrong. There is something that's not right for you, and that's okay. And it's about being able to, we cling to certainty when we're in that mode, I think. And that's why marketing can be so powerful. When we have someone that tells us that if we do their process, we are going to receive this as the outcome, and then we were going to be happy, and then we're going to have the clients, and we're going to get paid. And so when we're uncertain, when we're still languaging our feelings, our values, our purpose, our message, that can feel very alluring. It's really sexy. It's really like, oh, I found a thing. But what happens is you buy it, you do it, and it doesn't work because it's not aligned to who you are and the things that you value or what you want out of your business. And so it's really about being able to, or the shift for me anyway was, I'm brave enough to stop, to put down what's not working, even though I don't know what's going to replace it. And just be willing to allow that space. Because a lot of the time we just have to down tools and say, okay, I don't like doing this and it doesn't work this way, but I don't have the answer yet. But until we allow space to go and look for it or try and experiment, you know, I write fortnightly to my list. That doesn't work for everybody. Some people have way more to say than I do. Some people have a much, I mean, my audience is very like me. They don't want their cluttered inbox, right? So, but some people, weekly is absolutely fine. So there's no right thing. There's no amount of emails that are going to make your business successful. You have to have that relationship with your audience. You have to decide together. And that's the thing. I think a lot of marketing and a lot of the way the mindset is that I have a thing. This is my ideal clients over here, and they are going to buy from me. And your entire business is built from the viewpoint of yourself and what you're offering versus it's a relationship. Mainstream marketing doesn't take into consideration your customer often. And that relationship, that reciprocal relationship is important. You can't have a business without them. And we want to buy from people that we have a relationship with. We want connection. We're hardwired for it. So that's, so the mindset shift has to happen that you're not wrong. What you're feeling is not wrong, that you can language it and find the tools and the way to go about it. And then it's just about being brave enough to say, okay, I'm going to find a way to do this my way. Because there was no one out there there was no voices, there was no frames of reference, there was nothing like that for me. I had to look really hard and build it from different pieces. So not knowing the answer is the thing that you've got to be okay with.
Yeah, be okay with not knowing the answer.
Yeah. And my thing not being your thing. Like, I can teach you my framework and you'll think bits of it will work for you, but bits of it won't. And that's totally okay. I'm not here to say, this is the framework, people. Right. This is going to work. Like, this is how we should all be building our businesses, because that's not true. I'm here to help you connect dots that perhaps you can't see yet.
I think your framework it's large enough to work in part for anyone who chooses to use it, because it's broad enough to encompass all the different, I mean, theoretically, we could probably find something to break it, but sure. it seems it might not resonate. It's not going to probably resonate with everyone.
100%.
But if it resonated with them, I think they would be able to find themselves within it and find something useful there. Yeah.
I think it's underpinned by curiosity and a real desire to see how far you can take it. Like, I know that's something that you love doing. It's like, well, how can we play with this, right? How far can we take this? Every permaculture design principle you can do that with. And it's built in a circle so that you just continually go round and round and round. You don't do design principle number 1 through to 12 and then that's it. You're done. You move on to the next bit of your business. You are always, always going deeper with the intention of it, which is one of the reasons that I love it. How can you do something even more efficiently? Because the minute you change something, it has an impact. And so you see things differently again. And so that impacts or informs how you go around it again.
Yes. It's like, it's more like a spiral than it is a straight line, right? Like you're kind of coming back around and going a little deeper.
Yeah.
It's this way for me when I'm contemplating so many things about like the nature of reality and consciousness and freedom and acceptance and all like those things. Well, I see something and I'm like, oh, wow. And it's like, I'm in a whole new world. And then I'm like, wait a minute, what about this? Oh, wow. And I'm in a whole new world again. And I'm like, I didn't get it before at all. And I keep doing that. I have these, they're not aha moments to me. They're facepalm moments. And I keep and again, like, oh, why didn't I see that? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I mean, not lovingly. It's not like,
of course. Yeah.
Myself up the head. Oh, goodness. So this has been really wonderful, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing this.
It's been amazing.
Being willing to just kind of like, there's so much I just want to like, I sit with it every time after I talk to you. I'm like, Sarah, because I feel all these things. Like I mean, the beautiful.
Oh, man, you should try being in my head, honestly.
Well, right now I kind of am a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and the beautiful thing is that we get to choose. You get to choose. You can do it small. You can do it bigger. You can grow it. You can do it small and then big and then go back to small.
Yeah.
There's no have-tos about any of this.
No, definitely not. Start where you are. Start with what you've got. You can take one area of your business and start going, okay, well, how can I do this more efficiently? Or how can this be better, or how can this be more helpful to people? Like there's so many ways that you can start applying more intention. Like, for me, intentional business is what I dream about.
Yeah. So I was at a park the other day with my partner, and he was like commenting on how people had thrown their garbage out. And he's like, why? How do they do that? And I started thinking, what would I have to think in order to behave that way? Because I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
What do I think differently that they're not thinking? And it came to me that they think they don't make a difference.
Yes.
Because they know that's pollution. And I'm like, so I said, what if we all knew that the choices we make now, the little ones, make a difference?
Yeah. Massively so. It's such an important shift. It's such that's the biggest thing. Everyone talks about the big stuff you can do, but actually it's all in the tiny details. It's all in the tiny decisions. I mean, it became really noticeable when we moved off grid, like how much responsibility I felt, not just for our own property, but for the earth in general. And I've been living very sort of consciously for a long time, and was an environmentalist for a very, very long time. But just knowing that what we use to wash our dishes with, that ends up in our dams eventually through a grey water process, through a filtration process. And it's like, so it matters what I buy, what I purchase, where I give my money to, and like I say, we're in a privileged position where we get to make those decisions quite easily now. But that's how tiny that decision can be versus this huge, like, you don't have to live off grid. You can change your washing up liquid. You don't have to live off grid. You can choose glass containers instead of plastic. There's so many, you don't have to, even just shifting you can earn six figures without and still reach people that can't afford you. You can do that. You can earn six figures, multiple six figures, and still be able to reach people who can't afford $100. There are ways to do that. Yeah. If you want to. But you're right. It's about not feeling connected and not thinking you matter, not thinking that what you do has an impact. That's what it comes down to.
Yes, that's why I think that people, we innocently act in ways that are irresponsible because we believe we don't make a difference, or we're not worth it. We don't make a difference. Nothing we do matters. And then when hope comes in, I believe we naturally start to behave differently. Like, oh, I can make a difference here in this little thing. Yes. I see it. Like, that's why it's so powerful. I was listening to a podcast interview with Dr. Jane Goodall, and she does work with kids. Oh, yeah. And one of the things that she teaches them is, like, she goes into these towns in Tanzania and works with these communities, these tribal communities, and the children there, and has them work on projects that either contribute towards people, the environment, or animals. Yeah. And then they share with each other, and they see directly the impact they can have. Yeah. And it stays with them, and they grow up to be adults who believe, oh, we can make a difference through our small actions.
Yes.
And we can change the world.
That's the same as, our we were talking earlier, the abundance is everywhere. It's just the distribution. It's like we're not taking responsibility for the entire supply chain of the products that we buy. So we're purchasing, a skirt from H&M for $10, thinking we've got a great deal. We've got no idea of the woman in Bangladesh or, wherever, who's making it, who's not earning a living wage. Like, how can they be if that's only $10 to us?
Yeah. Please teach me.
Completely disconnected.
Please teach me these things. I just got like a piece of pepper that was stuck in my tooth. I'm like, what happened? Teach me, Sarah.
Well, I think it's just about asking questions, right? It's about becoming more conscious about why things are so cheap, or why we buy things, where we're buying them from, why fast fashion exists, why, like, I think we are so disconnected from everything that we consume. It's very difficult to trace it back. You've got these shiny marketing, like, we're doing good, we're, have a sustainability profile, but the reality is that someone's still being underpaid for their labor, and more often than not, it's women.
Yeah. Oh, those are the ones in particular. The women are going to carry this for you. Cool. Yeah. So we've got to wrap this up now, but I'm trying to think. So, like, what's your biggest insight, or what would you like to take away from this conversation that we've had today?
I think for me, it's talking more about exploring. You are such a good mirror for that. You are so curious, and I think you are, though. You're the most curious person I know. and it's awesome. And I can get a little bit too like in my zone, and I forget to sort of be curious. I have to be more intentional with it, I think, the curiosity piece. I'm good at experimenting, and I'm good at like sort of releasing expectation and all of that. But yeah, I think for me, it's going to be bringing some of your energy and curiosity into my day to day and my world generally, I think. Yeah, you have a lot more fun, I think.
Well, I do have an awful lot of fun, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
I'm a professional player.
Yes, I mean, just your whole sort of ethos behind business, like this whole storytelling kind of, play, experiment with others like that. That's just so interesting to me because it's not something that I do, certainly not consciously anyway. If someone invites me like you do, I'm like, yeah, God, yeah, let's talk. But it's not, I don't approach business in the same way. And it's just a really nice insight to have, to kind of maybe add that element in a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah. And you continuously inspire me to think a little deeper, be a little more intentional, think about the questions that are hard to answer. Like I see something that doesn't feel right, and I'll go, that's too hard. I can't think about it. And, I'm not a researcher, but I do listen to people. Yeah. And when people cross my path and I'll be like, oh, Sarah's seeing something I don't see, and I'm missing it. And they're like, something is there for me, Yeah. So that's what I take from this. And specifically, there's something I'm chewing on that you're helping me see, and I'm not even sure what it is yet. So thank you for that. And where can people connect with you? Where would you like to send them?
You can go to my website, sarahtaylor.net. And all of my links and newsletter and everything is there for you to consume.
Cool. And I highly, highly recommend following Sarah in particular, because she practices what she preaches and shares her journey along the way. And you will not be inundated with stuff you don't want to get. Anytime there's something more, it's like, hey, if you don't want this, if you want this, here. If you don't, you're not going to get it. Like it's very clear. So yeah, it's a great way to learn from that. Thank you, Sarah. I really, really appreciate it.
I love it. I just love playing with you. It's just fun. And you really are so inspiring for that. Like you have such a curiosity that's amazing. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining me for today's Wildspire Conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wild Creation email from me filled with more inspiring stories, marketing experiments, playful questions, new podcast episodes, videos and freebies, and anything else I'm playing with, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/wild creation. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.